They said we'd never find anything down there, but Molly knew better. Sean whispered, his eyes narrowing as he scanned the eerie silence of the desert. The sun was setting behind the hills, casting long shadows across the barren landscape. Beside him, Molly, his combat canine, was alert, her fur bristling with every breeze. The two of them had been through countless missions together, but this felt different. Molly's ears perked up, and she began sniffing the air, her movements tense. She led him forward, her nose to the ground, as if chasing a scent no one else could detect. Sean's heart raced as he followed, the stillness of the night pressing down on him. He didn't know what they were after, but he trusted her. He had to. They had been through too much together. They came upon a rocky outcrop, the ground uneven beneath their boots. Molly stopped in her tracks, her body rigid. She turned to him, eyes wide with unspoken understanding. She was no longer just a dog. She was his partner, his lifeline. Sean crouched down beside her, his breath shallow, and listened. It was then he heard it, a faint hum, like the pulse of the earth itself. Molly growled low in her throat, warning him. She could sense it, something hidden beneath the surface. Sean reached down, his fingers brushing against something cold. A metal hatch. It was old, rusted, nearly buried under the dirt and rock. He tugged at it, struggling to pry it open, the hinges creaking in protest. His muscles ached, but he knew they had to get inside. Whatever was down there, it had been waiting for them. The moment the hatch gave way, the air seemed to change, growing heavier, thicker, as if the earth had been holding its breath. Inside, the dim glow of a forgotten tunnel stretched into the darkness. Molly whined softly, her eyes locked on the opening. Sean hesitated for a moment, then nodded. After you, he whispered. With a quiet bark, Molly darted inside, her paws light on the stone floor. Sean followed, his flashlight cutting through the gloom. The tunnel was narrow, winding deeper into the earth. They moved cautiously, every step echoing in the silence. It felt like they were walking through time, past. Secrets long buried. Then, they reached a small chamber. The air was thick with dust, and the floor was covered in old, rotting crates. Molly stopped at one of them, sniffing intently. Her tail swished once, then she scratched at the side. Sean knelt down, peeling away the rotting wood to reveal a hidden compartment. Inside was a box. Not just any box. A heavy, metal box covered in strange markings. It was locked tight, but Sean could feel the weight of it, the promise of something extraordinary. What was it? Why had it been buried here? And more importantly, what did it mean for them? Molly stood by his side, her eyes fixed on the box. They both knew this was just the beginning. What they uncovered next would change everything. Sean ran his fingers over the metal box, the strange markings still sending a chill down his spine. Molly, standing nearby, was unusually still, her ears perked and eyes never leaving the box. The silence in the chamber felt heavier now, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath, waiting for something to happen. Sean's heart raced. He wasn't sure why, but this moment felt like it was more than just a find. It felt like a test. The box was cold to the touch, yet there was an undeniable warmth coming from within it, a pulse that seemed to beat in sync with his own. He fumbled with the lock, his hands shaking, but when it clicked open, the air shifted. The lid creaked as he lifted it, revealing a bundle of old documents wrapped in a worn, leather-bound cover. His fingers trembled as he unwrapped the leather, uncovering a stack of papers yellowed with age. The top sheet had more strange symbols, but as he scanned them, something caught his eye, a name. His name, Seano Connor. He blinked in confusion. That couldn't be right. His breath caught in his throat as he flipped through the pages. Each one contained a story, one that seemed impossibly familiar, but also distant, as if it belonged to someone else. There were names of people he'd never met, places he'd never been, and events that felt like they were ripped from the pages of a dream. But the more he read, the more he realized it was his own life, laid out in detail he couldn't possibly have known. Every mission he'd been on, every close call, every time he'd felt alone in the world, it was all there. But there was more. At the very end of the stack, there was a final page, and at the bottom, a line that seemed to burn into his mind. The truth lies beneath the earth. You will be the one to unlock it. He stared at the words, a cold shiver running down his spine. Was this a prophecy? Or some kind of trap? He looked over at Molly, who was now sitting next to him, her eyes still locked on the papers. She had always been his guide, his protector, but now she seemed almost as unsettled as he was. Sean took a deep breath and closed the box, trying to make sense of what he had just found. His mind raced with questions. Who left this for him? And why? The darkness in the tunnel seemed to close in around him, pressing against his chest as he stood up. Molly stood with him, her tail wagging slowly, as if urging him to move. He didn't know what awaited him next, but he knew one thing for sure. This was just the beginning. As they made their way back through the tunnel, the faintest sound echoed from deep within the earth, a rumble that shook the ground beneath them. Was it the wind? Or was something far deeper stirring, something that had been waiting for Sean all along? Sean and Molly moved deeper into the tunnel, the faint tremor from below still vibrating through the ground. His mind was racing, trying to make sense of the strange documents he had uncovered. The words burned in his memory, especially the cryptic message. The truth lies beneath the earth. You will be the one to unlock it. As they walked, the walls of the tunnel seemed to grow narrower, the air growing thick with dust and mystery. Every step felt like they were descending further into something much bigger than they had ever expected. The path ahead was barely visible, the only light coming from Sean's flashlight, which flickered intermittently as if reluctant to reveal the secrets hidden in the darkness. Molly, as always, was ahead of him, leading the way with the confidence of a true partner. Her ears twitched as she moved, sensing something Sean could not. He followed her, feeling the weight of the unknown pressing down on him. The deeper they went, the stronger the vibrations became. It was as if the earth itself was alive, pulsing with energy. Sean stopped, the hairs on the back of his neck standing on end. He could hear something now, a low, rhythmic hum like the heartbeat of the earth. Molly's growls broke the silence, her stance stiff as she turned to face him, eyes wide and alert. It wasn't just the vibrations anymore. There was something else down here, something watching. The tunnel stretched ahead, twisting and turning, but now Sean could feel it. The weight of 1,000 secrets buried beneath the ground, waiting to be uncovered. They reached a clearing in the tunnel, where the stone walls opened up into a small cavern. At the center of the cavern, there was a pedestal, and atop it, a small stone box, similar to the one he had found earlier. This time, however, the air around it felt different. It wasn't just the hum of the earth. This felt alive, as if the box itself was calling to him. Sean knelt down, his fingers trembling as he reached for it. His heart raced, the sense of destiny overwhelming him. This was the moment he had been waiting for, the moment the earth had been whispering about. He opened the box carefully, the lid creaking as it moved. Inside, there was another document, this one far older than the last. The paper was brittle, yellowed with age, and the ink was faded. As he unfolded it, he felt a sense of déjà vu. The handwriting was familiar, but the words were even more cryptic than before. The key to the past lies in the hands of the chosen. He stared at the words, his pulse quickening. Was he the chosen one? The box seemed to pulse with energy as if responding to his thoughts. Molly whined softly, standing close to him, her gaze never leaving the box. The vibrations were stronger now, the hum in the air turning into a low roar. Sean felt it deep in his chest. Something was awakening. As the box opened fully, a faint glow began to radiate from within, lighting up the cavern with an eerie, ethereal light. Sean's breath caught in his throat. The secrets of the earth were beginning to reveal themselves, but what would they mean for him, for Molly, and for the world above? The glow from the stone box intensified, casting long shadows across the cavern. Sean's heartbeat quickened as he leaned closer, his hands trembling as he examined the ancient paper inside. The strange symbols and faded ink seemed to come alive under the light. Molly stood by his side, her fur bristling, and Sean could feel her tension. There was something about this moment that felt so much bigger than anything they had faced before. The hum in the air grew louder, resonating through the walls, vibrating deep into his bones. It was as if the earth itself was awakening, responding to the discovery they had made. The words on the paper seemed familiar, almost like echoes of a memory, but they were still too cryptic to understand fully. He scanned the writing again, his brow furrowed in concentration. The key to the past lies in the hands of the chosen. Sean's mind raced, but the meaning still eluded him. Was he really the one meant to unlock whatever lay hidden in the earth? The energy around him seemed to pulse in response to his thoughts. He placed his hand on the glowing stone box, feeling the vibrations beneath his fingertips. The moment his skin made contact, the entire cavern trembled, and for a split second, it felt as though time itself had stopped. Molly barked once, the sharp sound snapping him back to reality. He pulled his hand away quickly, heart racing. Something had changed. The hum in the air had shifted, no longer a low, rhythmic pulse but a high-pitched tone that seemed to cut through the very air around him. The box had opened further, and now a soft whisper seemed to rise from within it, faint but unmistakable. He couldn't make out the words, but the tone was unmistakable, urgent. The walls of the cavern seemed to close in around him, the shadows stretching longer, creeping closer. Sean's thoughts were clouded with questions, but before he could process them, a sudden realization struck him. Whatever this was, whatever had been waiting beneath the earth, it was not just a relic from a past. It was alive, alive in a way that was beyond his understanding. The ground beneath his feet vibrated once more, this time more violently, as if the very earth was preparing for something to emerge. Molly stood frozen, her eyes wide, her ears flat against her head. She barked again, the sound almost frantic, as if warning Sean of something he couldn't see. The glow from the stone box flickered, casting a long shadow that seemed to stretch beyond the cavern's walls. The air grew colder, and Sean felt an inexplicable sense of dread seep into his chest. Was this a mistake? Had they uncovered something they were never meant to find? The question lingered in his mind as he stepped back, but the answer would have to wait. The ground shifted beneath him, and the sound of something moving, something large, reverberated through the cavern. Sean's instincts screamed at him to run, but his feet felt frozen to the floor, his eyes locked on the glowing box. A rumble echoed through the earth as a deep, hollow sound filled the air. Then, as suddenly as it had started, everything went silent. The box was now completely open, and inside it, there was nothing but darkness. Sean stared at the stone box, now completely open, but inside there was nothing. No hidden treasure, no ancient artifact, just an emptiness that seemed to stretch on forever. He felt the weight of the silence press against him, thick and suffocating. Molly, ever vigilant, sniffed around the cavern, her eyes darting from one shadow to the next, her body tense. She didn't trust this, and neither did Sean. He stepped back, his hands still lingering near the edge of the stone box, the coldness of it seeping into his skin. The glow had faded, and the air had become still, too still. But as he stood there, trying to process the emptiness before him, something began to shift. The walls of the cavern, once solid and unmoving, began to creak, their surfaces shifting slightly, almost imperceptibly. Sean's heart raced again. Was the cavern moving? No, it wasn't the cavern. It was something deeper, something that had been sleeping, waiting for this moment. He could feel the tremors again, not in the ground, but in the air, as if the atmosphere itself was reacting to whatever had been hidden. In the box, Molly barked once, sharply, snapping Sean out of his thoughts. She was looking at something in the distance, her body rigid, every muscle coiled, ready to spring. Sean followed her gaze, his breath catching in his throat. From the shadows, a faint outline appeared, slowly taking form. A figure. At first, it was nothing more than a blur, but as the shape came into focus, It became clearer. An old man, his face lined with deep wrinkles, his eyes hidden behind dark glasses. He was standing perfectly still, his clothes tattered, his hands clasped in front of him. Sean's mind reeled. Who was this? How had he gotten here? Molly growled low in her throat. Her hackles raised, but she didn't move. The old man took a step forward, his movements slow and deliberate. Sean instinctively took a step back, his hand resting on the handle of his knife. But the old man didn't seem threatening. Instead, his presence felt familiar. You found it, the old man said, his voice soft but clear, carrying a weight that seemed to echo in the cavern. Sean didn't answer. He couldn't. His throat was dry, his mind racing to make sense of what was happening. You found what I've been waiting for, the old man continued. It was meant for you. Sean's pulse quickened, his heart pounding in his ears. What was the old man talking about? What had been meant for him? The old man's lips curled into a faint smile, his eyes glinting with something Sean couldn't quite place. You've unlocked the truth, the man said, his voice filled with a quiet reverence. The earth has chosen you. Sean's stomach twisted. He had no idea what this meant. What truth? What earth? The old man stepped closer, his presence almost overpowering, and for the first time in a long time, Sean felt a chill that wasn't just the cold air of the cavern. It was something deeper, something unsettling. You must go further, the old man whispered. The truth you seek is not here. It lies deeper. Follow me. Sean didn't move. Molly let out a low growl, her eyes fixed on the figure in front of them. The old man's smile faded, replaced by a look of something else, something far older and far more knowing. The earth is waiting for you, Sean O'Connor, the man said, his voice almost a command. You will unlock what has been hidden for centuries. Sean stood frozen, the weight of the man's words settling over him like a heavy fog. The cavern seemed to grow colder, the shadows deeper, as if they were waiting for him to make a choice. Molly's growl deepened. Sean didn't know what he was supposed to do, but he knew one thing for certain. This was no coincidence. Everything had led to this moment. And now, the only question was whether he was ready to face whatever lay ahead. The old man's words hung in the air like a distant echo. Sean stood frozen, the weight of the cavern pressing down on him. Molly's growl rumbled softly, but she didn't move, her instincts sharper than ever. Sean's mind raced. What truth? What was hidden beneath the earth, waiting for him? The silence stretched between them, the air growing colder by the second. The old man's gaze never wavered, and something in his eyes told Sean that there was no turning back. He could feel it now, deep in his bones. This was a moment that could change everything. You must go further, the old man repeated, his voice now laced with an urgency that Sean hadn't noticed before. The earth has chosen you, but you must prove you are worthy. Sean swallowed hard, trying to process the overwhelming weight of the situation. The old man turned and started to walk, his steps slow but sure. It was as if he had been here 1,000 times before, as if he knew exactly where to go. Sean hesitated, but something in him stirred. Curiosity, fear, determination. He wasn't sure which. But he knew that he couldn't walk away now. Not after everything that had led him here. He glanced down at Molly, who was now standing beside him, her gaze fixed on the old man. With a deep breath, Sean followed. The path ahead was narrow, the walls closing in as they moved deeper into the earth. The hum from before was louder now, vibrating through the stone, through Sean's very being. It felt like a heartbeat, steady and rhythmic, guiding them further into the darkness. The air was thick with dust, and the scent of earth filled his nose. Every step felt heavier as if the earth itself was pressing down on them, urging them to go further. They reached another cavern, even larger than the last, and in the center stood an enormous stone structure, its surface covered in ancient carvings. The carvings were unlike anything Sean had ever seen, twisted symbols and markings that seemed to shift and move as he looked at them. The old man approached the structure without hesitation, and Sean followed, his heart racing. Molly was close behind, her senses alert. This is where it begins, the old man said, his voice low but clear. The secrets you seek are here, but only if you can unlock them. Sean stepped forward, drawn to the structure. The carvings seemed to glow faintly in the dim light, and as he reached out to touch them, a surge of energy shot through him. It was electric, like 1,000 voices whispering in his ear, too soft to understand, but overwhelming in their intensity. The stone beneath his fingers hummed in response, and the carvings shifted, revealing a hidden doorway. Sean's breath caught in his throat as the door slowly creaked open. The darkness beyond seemed endless, but he could feel something else there, something alive, something waiting. Go, the old man urged, his eyes filled with a knowing that sent a chill down Sean's spine. This is your path now. What lies ahead will change everything. Sean hesitated for only a moment before stepping through the doorway, Molly following closely behind him. The air beyond was cold, and the darkness seemed to swallow them whole. But Sean could feel it now. The truth was just ahead, and there was no turning back. The darkness swallowed them whole as they stepped through the doorway. Sean's breath caught in his throat, and the air felt thick, heavy with anticipation. Molly's ears flicked, her senses heightened as she trotted alongside him. The passage ahead was narrow, the walls jagged and uneven, but Sean moved forward instinctively, guided by the pull of something unknown. The silence was almost deafening, broken only by the faint sound of their footsteps echoing against the stone. It was as if the very earth was holding its breath, waiting for them to make the next move. Sean's mind raced. What had the old man meant by "this is your path now"? What was waiting for them in the depths of the earth? And why had he been chosen for this? The answers felt so close, yet they remained just out of reach. The further they went, the more Sean felt the weight of the journey pressing on him, a pressure that seemed to come from deep within the ground itself. He couldn't shake the feeling that something immense, something ancient, was watching them, guiding them forward. Molly stopped suddenly, her body tense, her nose twitching in the air. She let out a low growl, and Sean instinctively placed a hand on her shoulder, his eyes scanning the darkness ahead. What she sensed? What was out there? Without warning, the walls around them began to hum, the vibration subtle at first, but growing stronger with each passing second. Sean's heart raced. The ground beneath their feet trembled, and the air seemed to pulse with energy. He reached out for the wall, his fingers brushing against the cold stone, and the moment he touched it, the vibration stopped. A doorway appeared in the wall before them, an ancient archway carved into the stone. It was barely visible in the dim light, but Sean could make out intricate markings along its surface. Symbols that looked familiar, but he couldn't quite place them. The glow from earlier seemed to be coming from beyond the archway, a faint light flickering like the heartbeat of the earth itself. Without hesitation, Sean stepped forward, his hand on Molly's leash as they moved toward the arch. The air felt thicker now, the anticipation building with each step. He didn't know what lay beyond, but he knew one thing. This was the moment he had been waiting for. The doorway beckoned him forward, and as he passed through the arch, the ground beneath him shifted. A sudden rush of cold air hit him, followed by a rush of warmth. The cavern beyond was vast, the space opening up into a great chamber that seemed to stretch endlessly in all directions. At the center of the chamber stood a massive stone pedestal, and on it rested an object that shone with an otherworldly light. Sean's breath caught in his throat as he approached, his mind racing with questions. What was this? What was it doing here? The closer he got, the more he felt the weight of the object's power. It was like nothing he had ever experienced before. He reached out, his hand trembling as he touched it, and the moment his fingers made contact, the entire cavern seemed to come alive. The air hummed with energy, the stone walls vibrating as if they were awakening after centuries of slumber. Molly let out a bark, her body tense, and Sean's heart raced. Something had changed. The earth was alive, and it was responding to them. As Sean stood there, his hand on the object, he felt a shift deep within him, a connection to something greater than himself. The object was more than just a relic. It was a key to something that had been hidden for millennia. And now, It was finally in his hands. As Sean stood there, his hand still resting on the object, he could feel a strange warmth spreading through him. It wasn't just the physical sensation, it was something deeper, something inside him that resonated with the energy of the earth itself. The cavern around him seemed to hum with a life of its own, the walls vibrating as though they were responding to the object in his hands. Molly, always so perceptive, stayed close by, her body tense, and her ears twitching as if she, too, could sense the power in the air. The glow from the object pulsed, casting an eerie light across the chamber. Sean's heart beat faster, not out of fear, but out of something else, something he couldn't quite understand. He wasn't sure what he had just unlocked, but he knew it was important. He knew that everything in his life had led him to this moment. As he lifted the object carefully from its pedestal, the ground beneath his feet shifted once more. The air grew warmer, the oppressive silence broken by a low rumble from deep within the earth. Sean looked around, his eyes scanning the cavern, but there was nothing visible, only the unsettling sense that something was moving beneath them. The walls of the chamber groaned, and Sean's breath caught in his throat. The vibrations seemed to intensify, becoming a rhythmic pulse that matched the beat of his heart. He couldn't explain it, but in that moment, he knew the earth itself was reacting to the object in his hands. The cavern, the stone walls, the floor beneath his feet, they were all alive. And somehow, they were all connected to him now. The light from the object flickered and dimmed before brightening once again, casting long, stretching shadows across the chamber. The hum in the air grew louder, a sound that seemed to reverberate deep in his chest. Sean's mind raced, trying to process everything that was happening. What had he just found? What did this mean for him? And what was the earth trying to tell him? Molly's low growl broke his thoughts, and he turned to look at her. She was staring at something in the distance, her body rigid, her eyes narrowed in concentration. Sean followed her gaze, but all he could see was the darkness that stretched beyond the edges of the glowing light. Slowly, cautiously, he moved forward, his grip tightening on the object in his hands. With each step, the earth seemed to respond, the vibrations growing more intense, as if something was rising from beneath the ground. Sean felt a pull, something guiding him forward. It was the same feeling he had when he first picked up the object, the sensation that he was meant to be here, that he was meant to uncover whatever lay hidden in the depths of the earth. The pulse in the air grew stronger, and as Sean stepped closer to the edge of the chamber, he could feel the temperature drop. The ground beneath him trembled, and the air seemed to shift, growing thicker with every breath he took. He wasn't sure what would happen next, but one thing was clear. He was about to discover something that would change everything, something that had been buried for centuries. And whatever it was waiting for him to uncover it. As Sean moved closer to the edge of the cavern, the ground beneath his feet began to tremble more intensely. The air, thick with anticipation, seemed to hum louder with each passing second. He could feel it now, the pull from deep within the earth, urging him forward. The object in his hands pulsed with an energy he could no longer deny. He had no idea what was about to happen, but something in his gut told him that he was on the brink of discovering something monumental. Molly stood close by, her body still and her eyes scanning the darkness ahead. She let out a low, anxious growl, and for a moment, Sean wondered if she could sense something that he couldn't. He reached down and gave her a reassuring pat, his hand steady but his heart racing. Together, they stepped forward into the unknown. The chamber grew darker as they moved deeper, but the faint glow from the object illuminated their path, casting long shadows along the stone walls. The vibrations in the air grew stronger, and Sean's entire body seemed to resonate with the energy pulsing through the cavern. It was as if the earth itself was alive, responding to him, to the object in his hands, and to the purpose he was only beginning to understand. He felt the weight of his journey pressing on him, but at the same time, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was exactly where he was meant to be. The deeper they ventured, the more the air seemed to change, growing heavier, filled with an almost palpable sense of history. Every step Sean took felt like a step closer to uncovering the truth, a truth that had been hidden away for centuries. He had no answers, only questions, but he was determined to find out what lay ahead. Molly's growl deepened as they neared the farthest corner of the cavern, and Sean instinctively slowed his pace. The faint glow from the object flickered again, casting eerie shadows on the walls. It was then that Sean saw it. At the far end of the cavern, partially obscured by layers of dirt and rock, was a large, ancient door. Its surface was covered in more strange symbols, much like the ones he had seen earlier on the pedestal. The markings seemed to shimmer, as if they were waiting for something to trigger their release. Sean's breath caught in his throat. This was it. This was the moment he had been waiting for. With a steady hand, he approached the door, his heart pounding in his chest. Molly stood close by, her eyes never leaving the markings on the door. He could feel the energy building around them, as if the door itself was alive, waiting to be opened. He reached for the surface of the door, his fingers brushing against the cool stone, and the moment he touched it, the symbols began to glow. The door creaked, its ancient hinges groaning as it slowly began to open. A rush of cold air surged out from within, and Sean felt a wave of energy wash over him. The world seemed to pause for a moment as the door opened wider, revealing a hidden chamber beyond. What lay inside, he couldn't yet see, but he knew one thing for certain. It was the next piece of the puzzle. He stepped forward, his hand still gripping the object, and with one final glance at Molly, he crossed the threshold into the darkness. The truth was finally within reach, but what would it reveal?